Oh, no.
Okay, because in addition to being the largest flea market, it's also a huge international gem and mineral show. So you have people who are bringing product directly from the mines, and a lot of wholesalers, a lot of money changing hands, and not a whole lot of oversight. There's rumors that it started with some woman who broke down selling her kids' toys out of the back of a pickup truck, and I have no idea if that's true, but it sounds great in the press. But here you have a whole lot of people who came to the middle of nowhere basically to be left alone, to make enough of a living that they could leave Quartzsite before it got too hot, and maybe come back and make a living next year. I'm sure some of these people coming from South America with the mines, I'm sure there's some good money being made, probably nowhere near the kind of money that's being made at the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show. But it was a good gig for a lot of people. And I met somebody on my way to judging a dog show who said, oh, if you groom dogs, you should go to Quartzsite. Everybody's got an RV, little dog in the RV. You do really well there. They looked at my photo album and they said, boy, you're good at what you do. And so I was working in Las Vegas, and they weren't real RV friendly there, and I like to keep my dogs in the RV and take them with me wherever I go so that I can check on them and know they're safe and walk them and care for them and so on and so forth. So when Vegas said, we don't want you to park your RV and you take up 2 spaces in the parking lot, I said, kiss my ass, I'm out of here. So I said, well, what about the Quartzsite place that guy told us about? I said, well, I don't know, maybe we could try it. So I went for 10 weeks with my ex-boyfriend, and we loved it. We had a great time. Line of people trying to get into town every year. Traffic, as far as the eye could see, backed up one weekend. We were amazed. That was the last year I ever saw that many people come to Quartzsite. And there's been a steady decline, but it's still a great, fun place, and we want people to come back. But it draws an eclectic mix of people, and what I noticed was that a lot of people that come to Quartzsite are fairly liberty-minded, free-spirited kinds of people. When you talk about some of the issues that Ernie talks about on the show or on the website, people actually know what these issues are. It was kind of cool. I was like, wow, I think I found a place I want to live and settle, and eventually that's what I did. I finally changed my driver's license and all that and became a registered voter. And I even ran for office this spring. They recalled all the council people that are currently giving the mayor so much trouble. The people got very angry at the way they treated the mayor. He was our first elected mayor for about 3 years, I think. We got into this mess because we had a succession of appointed acting mayors. Oh, this one died, and that one had health problems, and this one owed back taxes, and they put the squeeze on him, and he ran away like a scared little girl. And so next thing you know, every time we lose a mayor, what do? They appoint one from amongst their ranks. Well, that leaves a vacant council seat. So what do? They appoint their friend to the council seat. Yeah. Now, you can't get anybody on anything on the agenda unless it's recommended to the council by a municipal board. Not a committee, but a board. Who gets appointed to the board? Well, anybody the council wants. They approve all appointments to the boards. So, all of this was kind of,
Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby, yeah. Big teeth. So I didn't pay any attention to this for the first decade or so. I was doing my little part-time business there and not trying to get rich, just trying to, pay for the dogs and get out and come back and live a modest life, self-sufficient. And one day, it's the end of the season, the swap meet's empty, I'm the last real vendor left, because now I'm staying like 7 months, 6-7 months out of the year. And there's a guy in the swap meet with me who was going to be a caretaker for the summer, and another couple who broke down in Quartzsite and was waiting for their Social Security check or something. So there's 3 of us in this little swap meet, and here comes the code enforcement guy. And he's got a police officer with him. And he's giving my neighbors here a hard time. He said, well, you can't do this. You can't stay overnight. An RV park is not a swap meet, and a swap meet is not an RV park. Well, that wasn't true. Actually, the codes and ordinances and such pretty much say that they are basically the same thing. Now, if you want to sell, you do have to have that government permit. So my neighbor comes over to me and he says, well, you're pretty smart. Can they throw us out of here in 24 hours? And I said, no, but don't make them mad, and just, smile to the nice officer, and when they leave, we'll go down to the library and we'll look up the codes and see what they say. So they get done hassling my neighbors and tell them if they're not out of the swap meet in 24 hours, they're under arrest, and so on and so forth. And the guy turns around and he says, you can't do this. I said, I can't do what? Well, you can't have a kennel in the swap meet. So what do you mean? I have a permit. It says pet sitting and pet grooming, and I've been here like a decade, or I think 8, 9 years at that time. I said, you guys give me a permit every year. Why can't I do this? Well, you can't do this. I said, with all due respect, sir, I'm the volunteer executive director of legislative affairs for National Dog Registry. So I keep the law on my hard drive. Now, if you have a local ordinance that supersedes the state law, I'd like to see it. And that was the wrong thing to say. Don't question that authority. No, that's a bad idea. So he went back to town hall. He said, if you want to see that ordinance, well, I'll just come back and write you the ticket. I don't have to show it to you. I'll just write you the ticket. I said, with all due respect, I want to see the ordinance. Well, of course, he couldn't back up his assertion. He went to town hall. He pulled my vendor permit out of the file. He wrote revoked as per Mark, and he called the county animal control officer and told him I was running an illegal kennel on a revoked license and that the animals were in danger. now I've bred 5 generations of champion show dogs. I mean, my dogs have a better pedigree than I'll ever have, and they're my family, they're my children. My husband and I now, we don't have kids. Neither of us ever had kids. So when you mess with the kids, you're messing with mama. And here comes animal control with the officer, and he says, I'm here to inspect your animals. And I said, that's nice. Can I see your warrant? Well, I don't need a warrant. I'm here to inspect your animals. With all due respect, sir, you need a warrant. I said, I just listened to Supreme Court justices argue open fields law like for 2 hours the other night. And let me explain to you, you have no exigent circumstances. It's a nice balmy 70-something degree day. You can hear the air conditioning purring. The 2 dogs in the yard have food, water, everything they need, and I rotate them in and out all day, and I'm home with them all day, and you need to come back when you have a warrant. I'll show you anything you want. He said, well, how many dogs do you have? I said, we can have that conversation when you come back with a warrant. So he calls for backup, wants to know how many trucks he can get to come take my dogs. Now you have to understand that this happened to me probably less than a month after the Pima County Sheriff and the Humane Society of the United States had raided the home of a man named Pat Patrick in Tucson. They rolled a tank through this man's front yard, drug an elderly couple out of bed with automatic weapons pointed at their heads. Mr. Patrick and Emily told me that the gear was so new they hadn't even had a scuff on their shoes yet. And they took all their dogs. Not only did they take their dogs, they dispersed them to the far winds, the ones that they didn't kill, and they took a lifetime of breeding. These people had gotten a Lifetime Achievement Award from the registry, and they killed all their dogs.
Oh, they're humane though.
But yeah, which is ever so humane. Eventually, Emily and Pat Patrick were acquitted of all the charges against them.
Any compensation?
Completely acquitted.
Any compensation for the dog?
Absolutely not. Okay, they do have, last time I checked, some sort of a pending case on that and what have you. But I had been contacted by the Patricks for assistance through the dog registry. People said, can you help them? And now this had just happened like 3 weeks, and here's this guy at my door calling for backup to take my dogs. And it was all I could do to muster my sensibilities and stay calm. I said, whatever I do, I'm not going to allow them to take the dogs if I can help it. But if I go to jail, I can't help the dogs. So I kept asking, let me talk to your supervisor. So Sergeant shows up. We go through this whole thing again. By this time, 40, 50 people are standing around, and my boyfriend, who's now my husband, he's taking pictures with a camera phone on the other side of the fence, because I keep my private area fenced with a no trespassing sign, and they were all inside my fenced area, and I kept saying, well, just show me the warrant and we'll settle all this. And finally the sergeant says, you know, I'm tired of listening to this, and he's going in your house. And the 3 officers and the animal control opened the door, and I knew, because of dealing with legislation and dog issues and counties, supervisors and town councils across the country trying to help other people, and I wrote an article on what to do when they come to your door. I said, just do what you told everybody else to do. It'll be fine. And it didn't work out that way, actually. I did everything right and they did everything wrong, and I knew that if they'd had a warrant, that I would have been allowed to be present at the execution of that warrant. So the animal control guy goes in, and I got a litter of brand new show puppies, and I didn't want him opening kennels or touching the babies, so I go to follow him in, and I'm told that if I try to follow the police into my own home, I'm going to be arrested. And the police officer stepped in my doorway. Well, this was my first, encounter with the police. I didn't have a parking ticket. I mean, I got license, insurance. I'm really the kind of person that you would hopefully want to come to your community and open a little business and serve the community. I didn't even think anybody didn't like me. And so I went down the next day, I think, and I filed a complaint with Town Hall for having my civil rights violated. Well, that didn't go over too well either. Then, even worse, the animal control officer wrote me a ticket saying that I needed a county kennel permit. Well, I went to the hearing, and I pointed out to the hearing board officer, who is a retired justice of the peace, and God bless us, he's now our county supervisor, one of 3. And he told me, well, I don't care what the state law says. If Quartzsite's not going to enforce their ordinance, then the county's going to come in and do it. And I said, with all due respect, sir, state law says you can't do that. The town is an incorporated municipality, and they have an ordinance as strict as the state law, and you have no jurisdiction. And he said, I don't care. And by the way, and I don't even like your rabies certificates that you had from Oklahoma, and I want you to get something different. So I appealed to the County Board of Supervisors, and the county attorney said, oh my God, she's right. And he sent the town a letter saying that animal control would never come back into Quartzsite again. And I thought, well, yay, I did it. I proved that, the law is the law, and they don't get to break it either, and now they'll leave me alone. No, but that didn't happen. As a matter of fact, the council put the police in charge of animal control, and they put him, the code enforcement guy ended up leaving when the town manager moved up to be county manager, and they put the police in charge of code enforcement and animal control. So I made the mistake of getting up at the council meeting and pointing out to them that that was sort of a conflict of interest on that warrantless search and seizure thing when you're sending them for code enforcement and probable cause and all kinds of big words they didn't want to hear. And then former Mayor Huntley started using the gavel and with the sit down and the shut up and the, we don't want to hear any of these kinds of civil rights stuff. And a lot of people in Quartzsite, they don't live there, so it's real easy to make their life difficult. We'll send the zoning guy over, or we'll, send the police over, and they just kind of move along. Maybe they got kids and they don't want anybody to call CPS, or, maybe 20 years ago they had a felony for something before they grew up, or, they would just as soon leave. Well, the problem is I didn't have anything to lose. I didn't own property. I don't have children. I don't have a past, at least not one they know about. I mean, we're all human, right? But there was nothing they could hold over me and nothing they could use against me. And the worst part is I had a sort of a background they didn't know about in looking up laws and ordinances and codes and a pretty high IQ that I never utilized, much to my parents' chagrin. So I have the ability to look at seemingly unrelated events and make connections, very quick, rapid connections. I see patterns where most people just see random incidents. And I didn't leave. And so the more I refused to leave, the more difficult they tried to make it. And the position that I was in is after 27 years, I can't physically go to another town and build another business. I have no retirement. I have no insurance. I'm in the same position a lot of Americans are in. I've got no safety net. I built my little business, and I thought I was going to hire somebody to just take it over and phase me out and, buy a little piece of property and live happily ever after, farming my goat cheese and my aquaponics or whatever. I met my husband there. He's one of those gem and mineral guys that does silversmithing and all that kind of stuff. And I taught him how to wash dogs, and he taught me how to cut rocks. And I know I met the right guy because he said that he wanted to have 100 acres with a big farm and some animals, and he was sovereign. Did I know what that meant? Yeah, actually I did. He said, is that a problem? And I said, no, that's not a problem. I'll drive, honey. So the police chief apparently has been running extensive background checks on us in the hopes that he would find something. Now I can understand in his position why he'd be afraid of somebody who's educated, articulate, intelligent, well-liked in the community, and critical of him. But, you know, if you run somebody through the system once, maybe twice, nothing shows up, no wants, no warrants, no past, a rational person would let it go. If the DPS investigation affirms what his own administrative technician has asserted in a 2-year period since this happened, started about 3.5 years ago. In a 2-year period, I've allegedly been run through the NCIC CJIS system 109 times.
Oh, man.
And my husband, whose name just happens to be John Jones, has been run through the system 263 times. So I got kind of tired of it last April, a year and a half ago in April. The police chief came over. This was during the election cycle when Mayor Foster was running. He'd gotten past the primary. We were heading into the final election. And I had Ed Foster signs in front of the property I was leasing that year. And I'm out walking the dogs in my pajamas in the morning, and this little red truck comes spitting gravel onto the property. And people jump out and start putting up Wes Huntley for mayor signs. So I said, honey, you know, let's go see what they're up to. And I said, good morning, Mr. Mayor. Boy, I guess I'm going to have to put up a lot more Ed Foster signs today. And he's frantically whacking up the signs and dialing the phone. And so I said, honey, let's go get the camera. I don't think this is going to end well. So I went back to get out of my pajamas and put up my dog, and here comes the police chief. Unlike what he said in his report, it wasn't 20 minutes that no one else responded to the call. It was like within a couple of minutes, and we suspect he was hiding around the building across the street. We kind of think the whole thing was maybe a setup, but that's just, you know. No, that's just my, you know, they're not paranoid when they really are out to get you, right? I got a t-shirt that says that. But anyways, long story short, we grab the camera. My husband starts filming former appointed Mayor Wes Huntley talking to the police chief and his wife, and the police chief turns around and says, let me see some ID. And my husband says, well, for what? And the police chief says, disorderly conduct. My husband says, well, there's no disorderly conduct here. He's like 20 feet away filming on property we leased. And the police chief and the other officer, who had also quickly pulled in behind him, grabbed my husband, wrestled his coffee cup away. Let me see some IDs. Like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Finally, they let go of him. And he starts yelling, honey, call our lawyer. He just put his hands on me. And I'm dialing 911, telling him, listen, I don't care about jurisdiction. I want a county sheriff out here. Police chief just assaulted my husband. So I said, honey, come through the back way of the shop. We locked the shop. I got his DD-214, which, if you don't know what that is, that's the papers you get when you're discharged from the military. That his birth certificate is all he has. So we locked them out. I grabbed the thing. We got the camera rolling, and I hand him his ID through the fence. Police chief grabs it in both hands, and while both hands are occupied, I put the padlock on the gate.
Yeah.
Now, here's the police chief standing with a no trespassing sign in his face and a lock on the gate. And I called Ed for backup as a witness because, you know, just in case something went wrong, I wanted somebody to know. So the police chief is telling me through the fence that free speech rights are limited, and I'm saying, well, maybe yelling fire in a crowded theater, and he said there's penalties to pay. And here drives up Mr. Foster. So he tells Ed that he needs to leave or he's going to be arrested. And Ed pulls a few feet farther away, and we have this videotape discussion with the police chief. And finally he leaves us, and he goes to harass Ed for a bit, and then finally they leave the property. No one was arrested. We weren't charged with anything. But here's my husband showing that he has ID, and he's handing it to the police chief, and it's on videotape. So the county sheriff shows up. Nice lady, seemed like at the time, by the name of Karen Slaughter. So we show her the videotape of them assaulting my husband. It's kind of hard to see because the arms are flying, and he's the one holding the camera. And we explain to her what happened, and she goes back to county sheriff to file a police report. Well, the county sheriff was an officer on the Colorado River Indian Tribes Reservation with our police chief. So a couple hours later, here comes the nice sheriff, and she says, I'm really, really sorry, but this isn't going anywhere. But call me when you put the video on YouTube. So we did. And the police chief was none too happy to see his face on YouTube. Especially, you know how people, when they play poker, they might have a tell? Well, when the police chief is bluffing and he knows he's bluffing, he licks his lips like a lizard. And of course, just to have a little bit of fun at his expense and make myself feel better, I kind of looped that on the videotape. And then every officer in his department saw the video, everybody at the sheriff's office, everybody at DPS, everybody saw Police Chief Jeff Gilbert licking his lips like a lizard, making a jackass of himself. So now I really wasn't his favorite person in town, because I've got that, you know, a lot of customers now after almost a decade who count on me to be there to take care of their pets while they're in town. And I can't let them down. I mean, we literally don't have enough people to care for all the animals that come. So, you know, I feel like I got a sense of responsibility to the community. Other people in the community said, well, you fought them and you won and you were smart and you documented it. And they told me all their sad stories. Well, they, you know, code enforcement guy did this to me and the police did this to my wife. And now I feel like the whole community's counting on me. They said, please don't let it go. Please, for the rest of us, don't let it go. So I feel like I'm you know, holding the whole weight of a population of 3,600 up to 200,000 people who can't vote on my shoulders. I'm not going to let it go. I filed a notice of claim for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress, I think is what he put on there. And so I had the constable serve the town council at the town council meeting right before I left town under my lawyer's advice. No, this was last summer. So last June, the constable serves him with a notice of claim, and he serves the former mayor. And he has to wait to do that. Well, the constable gets up as the former mayor's leaving, and he goes to serve him with it, and the former mayor shoves the constable right in front of the police chief. And the constable says, I'm an officer of the court performing my duties. Arrest this man. And the chief says, I don't think so. So now the constable's mad. And he's filing complaints to AZ posts and certification boards and so on and so forth. Well, my lawyer said Quartzsite's not big enough to protect you while they mull over this notice of claim, so I'm going to suggest you get out of town. And we did. We were gone about 90 days last summer.
Tell them how you left town.
Oh yeah, this was good too. I wasn't quite packed all the way, so I had to call Ed. He's the mayor now. I'm packing up the last of my stuff.
Is he elected?
Yeah, he was the first elected mayor we'd had in 3 years. We call him the people's mayor because the people put him in there. And he got in by a slim margin, well, 30-something votes out of, I don't know, we have about 1,300 registered voters. But he got in there, and they didn't see that coming. They were not happy. And they treated him like the redheaded stepchild from the day he took office. So here, I serve him with this notice of claim on a Tuesday night, and I'm not quite packed. So we're packing frantically all day Wednesday, and the police chief is sitting across the street watching us. Now, I just served this man with a notice of claim for harassment, and he's sitting there watching us. And it's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. We want to leave, and he's sitting there. So I had to call the mayor, and the mayor had to call dispatch and tell county dispatch that the police chief needed to go elsewhere, and the mayor actually gave us a personal escort out of town. So
Does the mayor appoint the chief of police?
No, we have a common council government, which means that the mayor chairs the meetings. He is the CEO, and he does have certain powers delegated by the state. But basically, it's a council of 7. So, as far as a vote goes, it's not a strong mayor system. He's just 1 vote out of 7, and he's outnumbered 6-1 on almost everything that comes before the council. Sure.
Joyce, when they let you out today, it looks like they were grabbing you pretty hard. Did you get a bruise out of it?
No, I got a stress fracture out of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jennifer, when you hold that microphone too close, it makes
It's trying to pop.
I'm trying to tell you that.
I know. I'm used to the one in the council. You have to get right on top of it. I mean, you have to like talk over.
Okay, he left town.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Very good. Okay. So I left town. I went to a couple of dog shows, and I had to get back into town by a certain date. And the reason I had to get back into town is because Mike Roth, who's another sort of political troublemaker in their eyes, he had been arrested for disorderly conduct at the meeting the very night that the police chief assaulted my husband. There was a council meeting that night. And we were almost afraid to go to the council meeting that night. We were all joking, I bet we don't make it out of there. Well, I made it barely out of there. The police chief blocked my exit that night at the council meeting when I was trying to leave, and told me if I didn't leave, I would be cited for disrupting a public meeting. The meeting wasn't a public meeting, it was adjourned to executive session. But I was trying to leave, and he wasn't letting me leave all the same time he was telling me he was going to cite me. Well, about 10 minutes after I left the meeting, he turned on Mike, and they arrested Mike. I think the crime that he actually committed was he called the councilman's wife. He said something like, your husband's a jerk, and asked the building official if he was always an asshole or something like that. So he gets arrested for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. Now he's got to go to trial. So I got to be back by October 1st or something like that. I don't remember the date. So I don't even make it into Quartzsite. I get as far as the county courthouse. I almost missed the hearing because I had a car trouble at the motorhome. So I get to the courthouse and I'm slapped with a restraining order. Restraining order? What did I do? Tortuous interference with the contractual obligations of the other free newspaper in town who puts up all the ads for the incumbent council people. Now last time I checked, that was a civil charge, not a criminal charge, but the police chief was more than happy to write that one up. Harassment and tortuous interference. So I get slapped with this thing, and the photographer follows me around the trial trying to elicit a confrontation to get me arrested before I can testify in Mr. Ross' behalf and testify against the police chief. So, you know, he ends up getting convicted on the disorderly conduct, and it's an appeal, and that didn't bode well for anybody else who wanted to speak at meetings and things. They thought they'd gotten a small victory. Aha, we got Roth now. So I get back into town, and I file for a hearing, and of course it gets tossed out by Judge Mike Newman. Pretty fair guy, at least in my dealings with him. He seems like a pretty fair guy as far as justice of the peace go. So I announced to the town at the, you know, not that I wanted to particularly run for council. It only pays $300 a month, and there's a lot of homework involved, and I do have other business stuff. But everybody said, you know, we recalled them all while you were gone. Would you run for council? Sure, I'll run for council. Now I already got this, I've already said I'm going to start a rival newspaper, because now I'm mad. Because the one that's there, they don't print our letters. They defamed the mayor in his campaign. I mean, libeled him and defamed him horribly, and he won anyways. And I said, well, these people aren't going to print our letters, and they're not going to print only one side of this, and everybody kept saying, we need another newspaper. And I really didn't want to do that either. And I waited, and I hoped somebody else would step up to the plate, and they didn't. So as much as I thought I hated to write, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this thing. So now here I am. I say, I'm going to start a newspaper, and I'm going to run for town council against the vice mayor. Well, a couple of weeks go by, and here comes the building official that we just hired. He comes on property I'm leasing this year. Starts taking pictures of my personal stuff. I say, of course, now we live with the camera. We don't have a gun. I'm big on the Second Amendment, but I don't have a gun. But I have cameras, lots and lots of cameras. Everyone in the community is arming themselves now with cameras. The camera is the new gun. So anyways, Mr. Johnson pulls on the property after hours on his day off, and we've got the camera rolling. So I tell him, Mr. Johnson, you need to leave. You don't have a warrant. You're trespassing. And he says to me, you don't have any rights. You're not the property owner. Oh, Mr. Johnson, I lease this property, and I actually have a license. I have government permission to do this, and I do so have rights. He says, no, you don't. So I said, you know, Mr. Johnson, you need to leave. Excuse me, you need to leave. He shoves me.
Whoa.
And the camera was rolling. It's on YouTube. You can watch it, okay?